Great.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Donna Sorkin, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Cochlear Implant Alliance, and I'm deaf, and I have a cochlear implant. ACI Alliance is delighted to support the efforts of Lexi Finigan and this wonderful new teen sharing opportunity. And she was motivated to come up with the idea to offer this after being contacted by a number of teens who heard her as the voice of Cece on the Apple TV El Deafo series. And she and her family joined us this year in Boston in May at our Cochlear Implant Conference. And she was a huge hit when she opened the conference and told everyone about her story and about her plans to share with teens all over the country. So thank you, Lexi, for coming to us and or helping us reach out in your very special way and supporting teens in their thoughts and their questions. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Laura Adato of our staff, and she's going to provide a little bit of information about how this is going to work tonight.
Thanks so much, Donna. I'm going to give you guys just a minute or so of background. For those of you that don't know anything about ACI Alliance, we're a membership organization for people involved in all aspects of CI, from surgeons to audiologists to speech language pathologists to teachers, as well as parents and consumers. And we work on research, advocacy, and awareness for cochlear implants. I'll give a little bit of housekeeping about what we're going to do tonight. So we'll be together for about an hour. Lexi's going to share some wonderful slides that she's used in her own advocacy in school, and then we're going to open things up for a discussion. We're recording this section of the webinar. We aren't going to record the discussion, so we want people to feel free to share freely. We won't record or share that. And we're so delighted by all the interest in this webinar by everyone involved in supporting teens with cochlear implants. And we're really hoping this discussion is really for Lexi and her peers. So feel free to chime in and share your anecdotes. And we're really hopeful that the discussion can be for Lexi and the teens that have signed on tonight. While Lexi shares her slides, feel free to keep your cameras off. If you're comfortable turning your camera on for the discussion, we all think that makes for a really nice experience, but obviously that is your choice. Just to echo Donna, we're so delighted to get to know Lexi and work with her family. This is just our latest project with them, and we look forward to hearing from you guys through your feedback. There's a survey in the chat already, and we'll be emailing it out. This is the first of what we hope are a series of these on a variety of different topics, but we would love to hear from you guys about what you're interested in, what you like about this, what you want to see in future webinars. So after this is over, feel free to fill out the survey, and we would love to hear from you. So now I will turn it over to Lexi.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Lexi Finigan, and I'd like to welcome everybody to our first Cochlear Implant Connections for Teens webinar. I am so happy to have the opportunity to partner with American Cochlear Implant Alliance to make this happen, as I think this will be a great way to connect teens from all over the country who have hearing loss. Okay, so I am 16 years old and a rising junior in high school. I have been profoundly deaf from a very young age. I have had bilateral cochlear implants since I was 3 years old. I was born in China, and at 2.5 years old, I was adopted by my parents. I've grown up in this tropical climate, Florida Keys, and it is always hot, especially during this time. Some things that I love to do are playing golf, having Starbucks study sessions with my friends, traveling, and hanging out with my dog. So, this being that this is our first webinar, I would love to hear about where everybody's from. If you could please enter your state in the chat, that would be amazing. Colorado, Indiana, Michigan. Oh, I have a friend who's from Michigan, Ohio, California. I visited Nashville. I visited Vanderbilt at Nashville. And I'm also from Florida, so that's amazing. Okay, so today's topic is back to school, talking to teachers about hearing loss. After this webinar, we are going to put up a survey about what topics you all would like to discuss in future webinars. For example, cochlear implants with sports, how to talk to friends, or someone you're dating about being deaf or hard of hearing. Just so you know, I'm not an expert on these topics, so I'm going to have a special guest that will discuss each of these topics. And today I will show you all a slideshow that I made when I was in 7th grade for my middle school teachers. Afterwards, we will talk about how I approached this subject when starting high school. So this is my slideshow that I made with my teacher of the deaf, my table of contents, and my introduction. So a lot of this is repeated, and my photo is so cringy, but I had to keep the original photo. And this is what I wrote for my teachers to give them an overall introduction about who I am and anything I wanted them to know about me. Okay, so the phonak is the device that I used for my elementary and middle school. I explained the basic features of the device, and I found the microphone very useful for my middle school, but I don't use it as much for high school. It's honestly a personal preference. At first, my parents were giving me a really hard time about me not using the device in high school, but we ultimately agreed that as long as my grades were good, they would support my decision. I found out that many teachers were intimidated by having to learn how to use this new piece of equipment. But once I showed them how to use it, they realized it was super easy. And of course, I ensured that I would make sure that the equipment was charged in the classroom every night. Many teachers really appreciated learning about this before the first day of school, since the first day of school is a bunch of new things for teachers, students, staff, a lot of things. Okay, so where I sit in class. I love sitting in the front since I can lip read the teacher super easily. And if in the middle of the school year, the teacher is switching up seats, they are usually super friendly about me sitting in the same spot to ensure that I am learning to the best of my abilities. Especially since in high school, I don't use the microphone anymore, it's very helpful to sit in the front just so I can hear better and lip read really easily. Okay. Closed captions. Okay, I absolutely love this accommodation. I use it for YouTube videos that the teacher may be playing in class. In addition, I use this feature on my computer. It's called live captioning. It transcribes what the teacher is saying in real time. Sometimes when I am in the middle of writing notes, but I don't want to miss what the teacher is actually saying, I'll pull up my live captioning app on my computer or phone, and I'm good to go. Later on, I will look at my transcript. For the younger teens on the call today, a transcript is like the written summary of the teacher's lesson that they verbally spoke. Back to the story. Sometimes I would rewrite some parts of the transcript so that it would reinforce my memory of the notes and the concepts at hand. I never really used captioning before until our classes were on Zoom due to the pandemic. Then I realized how helpful captions are, and now I use them all the time on every platform, such as Netflix, YouTube, and Disney. Sometimes, when I'm watching a movie with my parents, I'm like, hey, why aren't the captions on? And they'll be, all right. And then we get it on. And then, but also it's really annoying with caption when they spoil some of the a shocking secret or something. So you win lose. Okay, repetition. You know those moments in class when the teacher asks a student a question, but the student, they have a quiet voice and they're really quiet, so you have no idea what they said. I would always answer the question in my head, but I never knew if my answer was correct or wrong. I would get so frustrated. So I would ask teachers after class to please repeat what the student said because I can't lip read that far or it's harder for me to hear. They're usually very friendly about answering the question, telling me what the correct answer was, but it's just really hard in the moment when you really want to know. Okay, testing and assignments. We all know that it's hard to concentrate and take a test in a noisy environment. Unfortunately, a lot of our hearing aids and cochlear implants, even on our best settings, don't always get rid of the background noise. I would get easily distracted when a student behind me was tapping his foot or a pencil on the desk or humming. So one of my accommodations is that I'm allowed to test in a quieter environment, but it is only for state testing. Even though I can technically take off my cochlear implants during testing, oftentimes the teacher will state instructions or the time left on the test in the middle of me taking the test. So I would miss that information and sometimes I would feel left out. I have been able to take them off recently though because of the digital testing and the clock is automatically on the screen. But back in my elementary years, everything was on paper, so I had to always be on the lookout for anything hearing wise. So, written copies of direction slide. So, this accommodation involves the teacher printing out their script for the lesson or instruction for the lesson so that you basically have captions in front of you instead of worrying about misunderstanding words or concepts the teacher is saying. Another way is you can just use your live caption if they don't have it written down, the instruction. Okay, note-taking assistance. So I haven't used this accommodation, but there's different ways to utilize this accommodation. You can use the live captioning, as I mentioned before, have the written copies of the direction, or have another student help you. So if another student helps you, you can either have them, verbally help you, or usually the teacher will have them give you their notes for reference. Okay. And then this is my slide that I would put my email and my teacher of the deaf email for any questions that the teacher may have. And then, so I know we have different ages of teens today. So do any of the upcoming middle schoolers have any questions for me or the group if possible? Okay. Well, I had an emergency question just in case, because I wanted to give a little bit more in depth. And the question was, well, if you have an IEP, but you're not sure what is on it, or maybe a 504 that some kids may have, there's different ways you can learn. Oh, why did you stop using Hearing Assistant? Okay, so from my middle school, it was for teachers, so it was a lot easier to be able to talk to my teachers about, um, about me being deaf. And then I transferred to high school, and that was 7 teachers, so it was a really big change. And then also, I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't the most responsible in terms of I would forget about the microphone. I would be like, oh shoot, I have to go to back to my previous class to get my microphone. And then it's just I was very worried about that sort of thing. And also the teachers I found at my high school were really awesome and on top of it with my accommodations. So I felt I didn't need the microphone. And also there's just some little things such as um, with the microphone, it's very hard for me to do group work. You only hear what is input in the microphone. So a lot of in high school, you do a lot more group work and you do a lot of discussions. So the teacher, would forget to mute it, and then I wouldn't be able to understand anyone in the class just because I can only hear what the teacher was speaking. Can you tell us how to use live captioning? Okay, so there's an app I use which is Ava, and I use it on my phone. It's very easy. You just download it on Apple, and basically I would just have my phone. I would click on the app, and then I would put it on my desk of my table, and then I would just have my microphone point at the teacher, and it just captions it for you. You just click microphone on, and then it would allow you. I prefer to do the phone method. You can do it on computer, but it's very tedious, in my opinion, with the computer, just because it's very big, it's bulky. So I use the phone. I have a block schedule where my first class is different every day. Where do you think I should do? Okay, one thing you can do is charge it at home. I have an emergency mini mic in case, I really need to use it, but I don't use it often. And I just charge it at home. I'll bring it to school and then have the whole day, and I'll just bring it home and have it charged. But you just have to make sure you have it charged and you bring it home. Um, it's free. Ava's free, and it's AVA. It's free. Yeah. Thank you so much for all of the questions. I very appreciate it. All right. So we're gonna go to high school. High school is very big. Okay. So this is a lot of information, and basically, I'm gonna say what I said earlier. I went from a very small middle school to a pretty large high school. So my middle school was about 30 kids per grade, and my high school, my grade itself has 330 kids. So that change is very drastic. It was intimidating, to say the least. Transitioning to ninth grade was a very nerve-wracking since everything changed, from the campus to the teachers and many of my friends as well. My high school offered a Meet the Teacher event a week before high school began, where I could walk to each of my classrooms and meet my 7 teachers. In my middle school, I only had 4 teachers, so it was definitely a big change. Since this was not going to be a crowded event and people were going from classroom to classroom at their own pace, I decided to introduce myself to the teachers face to face and tell them I was deaf and that I had a current IEP that explained my basic accommodations. A lot of times, the teachers don't always look through the IEPs or 504s. So you might need to remind them that you actually have one. The accommodation that I always asked about was my seat preference. If they didn't have a seating chart, I would prefer to sit in the front of the class. I asked my new teachers questions like, do they use Google Classroom, which is a platform for teachers to upload assignments. I very like Google Classroom because a lot of my teachers would post the daily agenda or what assignments do they have assigned, what assignments are going to be due, and what exams might be coming up. And I asked them, do they visibly display due dates for assignments or upcoming tests? Because that was a huge help for me. Sometimes the teacher may say the due date, but if they verbally say it, you're going to miss it. So it's very nice to have that visual help. Having a form of visual display is super important. I would also sometimes show my teachers my cochlear implants, physically show them and say that even though I can hear well, I may need some clarifications at times. So, my second topic. So on the slide, it defines what a teacher of the deaf and what is their role. And yeah, I usually meet with my teacher of the deaf once a month. I did not set up a schedule prior to the start of the year. The teacher of the deaf would pull me out of one of my elective classes. So the elective classes is not your core classes, which is your English, math, science, and history class. And she pulled me out for our monthly meeting, which is common because she naturally assumed my elective was going to be an easier class. However, I learned a very, very valuable lesson because during that time, the teacher changed the due date of an assignment and I missed it while I was at the meeting. She verbally informed the class and did not post it on Google Classroom about the change of the assignment. So when she was like, Lexi, where is your assignment? I did not have it. I did not have it ready. And so I got a big fat 0. That was like one of my first B's. So it was definitely a big gut. But this could be a common occurrence. So even though this was an elective class, this particular teacher was very tough. So I definitely had to learn it the hard way. So you definitely have to be stern about them. If they change your assignment, you have to be stern about making sure they inform you. Because if they verbally say it and you don't see it digitally, what can you do? In hindsight, I would have not asked the teacher of the deaf to pull me out during this particular class. So, my advice would be to reach out to your teacher of the deaf beforehand so you know when she will be pulling you out for a meeting. Or, if you don't know which classes you can't really miss, then you can just ask your teacher of the deaf to adjust the meeting later on the year. So, I'm gonna meet mine with sometime this month since school is starting literally tomorrow for me. And I don't know which classes are the most I can miss a lot. So I'm just gonna wait until later on, let her know, like, hey, can you not pull me out of, my English? Can you pull me out of math, maybe? So there's gonna be different ways to solve the problem. So, third topic. Oftentimes, I have to remind my teachers about my accommodations. In my school, the teachers have on average 100 to 120 students total. Any number of their students may have their own accommodations and more. So it is very difficult for them to manage every single student at all times. You just have to be friendly, and they're usually very easy to talk to. And there are multiple ways to communicate to your teacher. If you are shy and you don't feel comfortable waiting after class to talk to them, you can just email them after school. Sometimes the teachers don't always check their email, so I always recommend talking to them in person. But if there's a specific teacher that's giving you a hard time and not following your accommodations, you should definitely email just so that you have that physical evidence in case you need to bring it up to the school about it when it becomes that serious. So it's definitely nice to have that physical evidence. Okay, important tips. High school can be awkward socially, and it is nerve-wracking to say hello. But sometimes that's all you need to become friends with some of the best people you'll have in high school. If you're shy, I would recommend to say hello to someone a bit more outgoing, since they're usually much more helpful and keep your conversation going. Vice versa to those who are extroverted. You can make someone's day by simply engaging in a conversation with them. Some of my friends in high school, I was absolutely terrified to talk to them because they looked intimidating. But once I actually engaged a conversation with them, they're one of my best friends right now. So, classmates and friends can be a useful tool in knowing the due dates of assignments, but they aren't always reliable. They may have not been paying attention, or they also couldn't hear what the teacher was saying. The best thing to do is either email the teacher or ask the teacher after class. Because remember, your classmates are not the ones setting the due dates. it's your teacher. And then let's define hearing fatigue. So as a deaf person, your brain is working nearly twice as hard to hear and understand speech. Essentially, your brain is going to get tired after nonstop focusing for 6 to 7 hours of school. I made the mistake of having my most rigorous class at the end of the day during my freshman year. I held fine, but my life would have been much easier if I had it in the morning. That's why I recommend students to have their hard classes in the morning and their easy classes at the end of the day. And that's why for my sophomore year, after I learned my lesson freshman year, I always go to my guidance counselor. I tell her, hey, can you have my hard classes, this? I want all my easy classes at the end of the day. And she's usually really understanding. And then who are your guidance counselor and IEP team? So your guidance counselor is the person you will go to for scheduling your classes and ensuring you have everything you need to graduate high school. I had to go to mine many times to make sure my schedule was the most beneficial to me. Literally yesterday, I had to go to my high school to meet with my counselor because my schedule was so wrong. All of my hardest classes were scheduled during my last few periods, so I had to get this fixed. The counselors know me really well because I definitely go there a lot to make sure I can get the best schedule possible for me. And then your IEP team is the most important people you are going to need to know for high school. They help with explaining your accommodations and they're your support team. For those of you who have an IEP and/or a 504, hopefully you were able to get involved with the goal setting process during your middle school years. Because by high school, you definitely should be very familiar with what your accommodations are and what services you may still need. And if you don't know what your IEP, you don't know what's on your IEP, there's different ways you can get it. So you can go to the front office and ask for them to print it out. They're usually really friendly. I've done it many times just to make sure I have a physical copy. It's usually a very quick and easy process. Something else you can do is in middle school, you should start attending your IEP meetings if you've never done it before. That way you can talk directly to the members of your team, which will usually be an educational specialist, hopefully a teacher of the deaf, and one or more of your teachers. This will help set the accommodation that will help you in the classroom and with your goals as well. And then questions. Okay, well, I feel like I just, gave a lot of information. So does anyone in the group have any questions or a possible experience they would like to mention about talking to the teachers or about hearing loss?
Lexi, if you want to unshare your screen, maybe we could
Okay.
transition and then see some faces if folks want to share any stories or ask questions.
I also want to mention one last thing. So for my freshman, I did have a freshman orientation in which I was able to visit my teachers before the first day of school. But for my sophomore and junior year, I am not able to do that. So what I do now is I will, well, first I would check my teacher's name on my schedule and I would use my school staff directory or school website to find my teacher's email. There, I would usually send them a quick introductory email. And then also, I had a lot of the same teachers because they taught a bunch of different subjects. So those who repeated, they already knew about me and my accommodations. But for my new teachers, I would visit them before classes started on the first day, and I took a couple minutes to introduce myself.
I just wanted to note that we're going to stop recording now. So folks that